It's week 17 of 2018, and we're back here in the studio after being out at RSA in San Francisco. So we've got a lot of news to catch up on, including security, Apple, Gmail, lots of different things, and that's all coming up on the Technado. It's starting right now. Hello and welcome to the Technado. I'm your host, Peter Van Rysdam, and I'm joined as always by Don Pizzette. I shouldn't say as always, because last week I was out in San Francisco.
You
with
abandoned
Daniel.
me.
Were you okay?
I was left here with, these people at ITProTV, and it was horrible. But you had a lot of fun at RSA.
I did, and I know now that you didn't actually watch the podcast because I introduced Daniel as Don 2.0, and I said I'm doing that just to see if Don actually watches while we're gone, and nothing back. So yeah, we had a really good time. We had a good time.
That's because I'm like Don 5.0. See, so why would I look that far back?
That's a fantastic point. But yeah,
Anyhow.
we did have a lot of good sessions, a lot of great interviews, and learned quite a bit out there as we shared, and we've got all those interviews going up actually today and tomorrow on our YouTube channel. We've got a playlist up for RSA 2018, so be sure to check those out because, like I said last week, we did 18 interviews on the show floor there at RSA, but that means that we neglected a lot of big news stories. So let's jump right into those because we've got a lot to talk about. So the first one up here is from threatpost.com, and this is it says the use of stegware increases in stealth malware attacks. And Don, I assume stegware is a dinosaur sort of dinosaur-based attack.
Prior to this article, I had not heard anybody call it stegware, and I certainly see where you would think stegosaurus, right? But it's short for steganography, and if you've worked in the security field, you should already be familiar with steganography, and that's where you hide data inside of something else, right? The best example was something that was used by numerous terrorist groups over the years, where they take their documents, they encrypt them so they're hidden, and they hide them inside of images. GIFs, JPEGs, and
like
so,
in the metadata of the
not in the metadata, like by changing individual pixels every here and there. To the human eye, you don't see it.
Okay.
The picture just looks like normal, but then you actually have data embedded inside of it. Well, one of the stories, and this is old news now. This was 20 years ago, was where a terrorist group had smuggled data in pornographic images, and it was a religiously backed group. So people who were doing intelligence, they said, well, they would never use these for transmitting data, but they certainly did. So hiding data, it's almost like a Trojan horse, except it's usually not an executable. It's hiding, like exfiltrating data by embedding it inside of images, tacking those images on as email signatures and sending it along. You see an email that looks very innocuous, very just generic email. There's an image in the signature. Inside of that image is now additional data. So what their branding as stegware, and I'm not exactly sure who came up with that term, is where you actually have malicious software where its entire payload is not in the executable. Because if the virus is all inside of the executable, it loads into RAM, and antivirus software, host-based intrusion prevention software, things like that can see it and say, oh, nope, that matches a signature. But if part of the payload is in the executable, but the other part is nested in some image, it's now two separate pieces. And scanned individually, they might not be noticed, right? And then when it runs, that software can just load the data from the image. Now it's got its full payload to do the damage. So that type of attack is on the rise. We're starting to see more of that out there in the field, and that's what ThreatPost was responding on. They did a pretty good write-up on some of the different things that have been turning up out there. They were talking about how the Sundown exploit kit, which came out in 2016, was one that really kind of popularized this idea. And now we're starting to see a heck of a lot more of it out there in the wild right now. So expect to see more. Again, I don't know who came up with stegware, but that's going to be a terminology that we're going to see more and more over the rest of 2018.
Now, when you defined stegware, to me it sounded like you were defining a Trojan because it's something hiding in something else. How is this different, or is this a subset?
Sure. So with a Trojan horse, we're normally talking about an executable. So here's this program. You think it's one thing, and you run it, and it's actually doing something else. Okay. Well, with steganography, it's not normally an executable. It's normally like an image. And if I say, here's this image, it actually is the image. If you open it, there's the image. But nested inside of it is additional data. data that's not executable by itself. If I open the image and have no idea there's other data hidden in it, it behaves like an image. And if I close the image, that's it. Like it never actually infects my machine. By itself, that's just hidden data, right? But attackers can use that two ways. One, they could actually carry, say, malicious payload in there, right? But a second program would have to be used to open it and execute it. And that's different than a Trojan, where the Trojan is able to execute itself, right? So it's two pieces. So up until now, where you really saw this used was in a second form, which was exfiltrating data. Let's say that I hack into your server and I get access to your database. And now I want to transmit all that out to my own servers. Well, a network administrator could watch and see that data flowing out and say, wait a minute, I know exactly what that is. There's my data going out, and they can stop it. But if they use steganography practices, they could nest it inside of images, emails, documents, where it just looks like regular traffic and it flows right out. And it is very, very difficult to see. Had I thought about it before the podcast, I could have whipped up a quick example where I used to do this in the security courses I would teach, where I could have two images, one that had the full text of Moby Dick embedded in the image and the other one that didn't. And with the human eye, you would look at them and you couldn't tell the difference. They just looked the same. And even if you knew it was there, that text could be encrypted. I would usually use like AES 128 or something to encrypt it, chuck it in there. And now, even if somebody knew the payload was there, they still had to have a private key to decrypt it and get at it. So that's what steganography does. It's similar, but different enough from a Trojan that they're not grouped under the same name.
Got it. So it's called stegware because it uses multiple facets, like the back of a stegosaurus has multiple
There we go.
humps. There.
And then it's got a spiked tail.
Clearly.
So there's always that.
It ties it all together. That makes total sense now. All right, next up, we've got an article from Ars Technica about. I love when they add "gidden" to a word. It's just like gate, like Watergate or whatever gate is the most recent thing. But Gidden, Drupal Gidden 2. So it's not even Drupal Gidden 1, which we all remember, of course. Touches off an arms race to mass exploit powerful web servers. So that sounds pretty frightening because it's powerful web servers.
Absolutely. So, and let me just throw in here real quick that Snowmageddon is my vote for favorite use of the Geddon add-on. But Drupal Geddon, there was a pretty big security flaw in Drupal. This was detected about 2 months ago. The Drupal team patched it, released an update out that fixed it and took care of that. The security company Securi actually did a really good write-up on how that exploit worked and how they could patch it. They have a service that does inline patching, so it behooves them to find things like that. But like any security exploit, the problem here is if it's fixed, that's part of the battle, but you've got to get people to update to apply the fix. And there are tens of thousands of Drupal servers that are out there that have not been patched. And if you've never heard of Drupal, it's very similar to like WordPress. It's a content management system. So if you want to whip up a website with a blog, you can fire up Drupal and be done in a matter of moments, right? It's super easy. It's got a theming platform and all that stuff. It's actually really good software. But when a vulnerability is found in it, there are thousands of Drupal servers all over the world that all become susceptible to an attack. In this case, the Drupal exploit is known. The code is released out there for how people can exploit it, and now they're doing it. In fact, what Securi found, I think it's actually in this Ars Technica article, I think they quote Securi in here somewhere, about saying how if they bring up a server and it's not patched, that it's getting scanned thousands of times per hour. And at this point, the announcement basically, let's find it. Oh, here it is, Securi. The quote from Securi is, anyone that has not patched is hacked already at this point, right? Wow. The scanners are so prolific. They're scanning the internet host so rapidly that if you have a Drupal server that has not been patched for CVE 2018-7600, then you are hacked. You have been broken into at this point. Now, they might not have done anything with it, right? They've gotten into your server, but they may not have changed your payload. But a lot of them are using it to turn your system into a scanner, so you're in turn scanning other systems. So it's really important if you use a Drupal server, you need to get it updated. If you haven't, update now. Assume that you're hacked, though, so you need to evaluate what damage has been done to your system and get things repaired. If you're one of those people, reach out to Securi. I've done a lot of work with them in the past. They're a great company. They can actually help you clean your server up.
Sounds good. I will do that this afternoon to all my Drupal.
All your Drupal servers?
Servers, yes. All right, next up, this one sounds a little fun. We've talked a lot about bug bounties and things recently, and there's a startup now that is in Dubai offering $3 million to anyone who can hack the iPhone. And I know we did a webinar yesterday about pen testing, and the last question we had was, how do I pen test without getting the police to knock on my door? And Don, you gave a great answer that you should only be pen testing the things that you own. So we're saying hack your own iPhone here, right? I
Yeah,
hope.
yeah. So this one's a tough one. The thing about bug bounty programs is that normally they're trying to make a system more secure, right? So in this case, we have a startup in Dubai, right? So you have to understand what country these startups are in to understand what their laws and what their motivations happen to be. So in this case, they're willing to pay over $1 million, in this case, over $3 million for anybody who can provide a hack to be able to break into the iPhone. Now, it's funny because if this were 10 years ago, there were tons of people that were trying to find ways to jailbreak iPhones so that you could run emulators and unauthorized software and gain root access and do all sorts of fun things with your iPhone. People used to find iOS hacks and then just publicly release them, right? But about 5 years ago, that whole world changed. And now it wasn't just this fun thing, right? There were hackers like was it George Lutz? GeoHots was his handle, and he would find an exploit and he would just release it on the internet. Here you go, guys, have fun. And this whole homebrew community was built around doing that. Now it's nation states saying we need to be able to surveil our citizens. We need to be able to break into our own citizens' phones to get at their data in violation of pretty much every aspect of privacy. And we need exploits that'll let us do that. And sometimes they come up with it on their own. Sometimes they're doing competitions like these and just saying, hey, we'll pay $3 million. If you can find an exploit for us and turn it over to us, we would love to have it. And here it's not limited to just iOS. It's Android, it's iOS, and they're offering money for it. Now, what are they going to do with that exploit once they get it? It's not like they're saying, hey, we'll pay $3 million if you hack it, and then we'll turn it over to the public. And here, everybody can benefit, right? What they're saying is turn it over to us because we can go on and create these secretive and controversial devices that get sold to governments. Some governments that are friendly governments, some governments that are not, that are abusive dictatorships. That they can turn this over and they can use it to control the press, to control the population, and so on.
Well, the last sentence here in this article, in 2016, the UAE government was accused of trying to use an iPhone 0 to exploit against a well-known human rights activist.
So it's not like, I mean, if you want to make a cool $3 million, great.
Yeah.
You know, if you can find an exploit, you can sell it to these guys, get $3 million, and it is on the up and up. You know, you're hacking your own phone, you find the exploit, you turn it over to them. But you just have to remember how these things are going to get used. And sometimes they're used for fun purposes. Sometimes they're used for advancing security. If you want to advance security of iOS, though, you wouldn't sell it to these guys. You would talk to Apple.
Yeah.
Like that's what you would do. So the odds are this is not going to be used for the greater good.
Well, fun is in the eye of the beholder. I mean, really,
that's true.
You know, what is fun? To me, it might be, you know, exploiting human rights activists. It's all personal opinion. Another thing that's just fun, and you can have a lot of good times with our next article on BBC.com. Hotel doors, hotel door locks worldwide were vulnerable to a hack. I mean, I guess this was bound to happen when we all switched to these electronic systems, and you know, chances are there are chains that all share the same technology, and someone discovered that they were vulnerable.
So yeah. I had read a similar article from a different news site, and their headline was a little bit different. It said, hackers create master key to over 300,000 hotel rooms. Wow. You know, a lot of hotels have switched to keyless entry now. Or it's not keyless, right? You have a card that you wave in front and you go in, or some of them have actually tied onto Apple's program. You use your Apple Watch to open up the door, or Disney World, they switch those little armbands. Yeah. So it's a lot easier than giving people a key that can't be changed. But it's a computer system. And so they found a flaw in the locks where they're able to basically generate a key that can open pretty much any door, right? And that's what it's saying. You can access restricted floors, you can access locked rooms, and be able to get in there. The team that discovered this was F-Secure, and basically they're saying they've been working with manufacturers to create a fix. But the problem is a lot of this is hardware. And the other problem is that a lot of these vendors, they specialize in creating hardware locks. The software is an afterthought to them. And so having some update system in place. How do we go out and update all these locks across all these hotels? They don't have a system in place for that. This is really not a door lock problem. This is an Internet of Things problem, an IoT problem. And we're seeing more and more of those lately. So I kind of have different opinions on this because, on one hand, it's like, man, attackers could open up my hotel room. But all along, hotel staff has been able to open up your hotel room, right? The cleaning crew gets in there every single day. The manager can issue out a key. It's been easy to social engineer managers for a long time to get hotel room keys.
Yeah, and what's the bigger risk that all of these locks are internet connected locks then? And to me, that's a lot easier to hack than sure it lets them get in and put out a patch quicker, but
Yeah.
it also opens you up.
Maybe it could be like one of those jail movies where remotely just all of a sudden all the doors
All
just
of them.
open up at
Sure.
once. And
Yeah. Yeah, and then everyone's on the same page, so that's fine with me. So yeah, just bring your own lock when you go to hotels now. I would say until
And there are
There
there,
are,
there
yeah,
are a
those
number of
devices.
very cheap products available on Amazon and other sites that are just simple, like stick-on alarms. If the door opens up, it goes off, that kind of thing. I know some people bring little door stops to stick behind the door at night, or engage the deadbolt or whatever that extra lock is that's
Yeah.
not tied to the key card. That's important while you're in the room. While you're out of the room, it's more important than ever to secure your valuables, especially secure your computers. And there is no better argument right here for using systems like File Vault or BitLocker or Veracrypt to encrypt the hard drives on your system so that if somebody steals your laptop that you left in your hotel room, you know that your data is still safe. That's more important than ever.
Yeah. All right, let's switch gears a little bit now to we've got some Gmail, some Google articles here. These ones from Tom's Hardware. So the first one here: forged email headers strike fear in Gmail users. And I read something about this the other day where they were saying, yeah, people realized they were hacking themselves or had
So-
phishing attacked themselves.
This is an interesting because this has been a problem for a long, long time, and I'm a little jaded to it because through all the videos and instruction that I've done over the years, I give my email address out to a ton of people, and my email address is posted on a number of web pages out there. So my spam volume is pretty spectacular, and the amount of email that I get is pretty high. Well, I will routinely get failed delivery messages, right? Where it says the mail server failed to deliver your email because it had a virus on it, right? And in the olden days, when email was created, it was very trusting, right? Everybody kind of trusted each other, and nobody would ever masquerade as somebody else. But the reality is that email doesn't have a whole lot of authentication mechanisms to it. And forging an email is super duper easy. If I wanted to write an email and make it look like it came from George Bush, it would take me all of 2 minutes to do it. And most of that would just be me trying to come up with the funniest email I could possibly type. The actual act of forging it takes a matter of seconds. So I get these emails pretty frequently saying that I just sent some malicious email and it bounces back. So you get these bounce messages. Well, that doesn't mean that I've been hacked, right? Anybody can forge an email and say it's from me, and they can send it along. And if it gets blocked anywhere along the way, the servers will send a bounce message, which actually will come back to me. Doesn't mean my account's been hacked. It means that email is just inherently insecure. That's how it is, right? A lot of people don't realize how little security is built around email. Servers have no way to verify an email came from who it said it came from, and SMTP transmits email in plain text by default, which makes it super easy to do man-in-the-middle attacks. A lot of servers have started switching to doing SSL or TLS, really, transport layer security to encrypt it. That helps a little bit, but you still can't verify an email came from who they said it came from. So there's things like the sender policy framework and DMARC and other things that are working to fix that, but they're all optional right now. So there is no true way to verify an email came from who that says it did, unless there's a digital signature attached to it, if somebody's using PGP or processes like that. But anybody can forge an account. So what happened this week is that some attackers really started to do that in volume. And now you've got regular people that are getting these messages that I've been getting for 10 years. People are starting to get in volume right now. And so people started freaking out, saying, oh, Gmail got hacked. Gmail's compromised. And that's not the case. It's just spammers will routinely use your address, once they have it, to be able to transmit messages out. So this is not a security weakness, not something you need to patch. It's just a flaw in the email system. The only real option here is to ignore it. Unfortunately, mostly spam will go to your spam box, right? It'll get filtered out, but bounce messages don't normally get filtered out because they seem important. So the system lets them go to your inbox. And now you open up that bounce message and here's the spam ad or whatever, links to malicious sites. So don't click on links in post box or post office bounce messages. You don't want to click on those because you're not the one who sent the message in the first place.
And what's interesting here in this one too, it says the message's sender forged the email's header to trick Gmail into putting the message into the sent folder instead of the inbox. So if you went back and said, "Wait, did I send something?" It maybe looks like you did, even though you didn't, because they can actually modify what's going on there to have it show up in whatever folder they want.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's trivial because email, the way that it's written right now, the way that SMTP hands off things, the way that the message transfer agents or MTAs work, they don't have a way to verify that data. All of this was created back in the late 1970s, early 1980s, and the world was a much more trusting place back then. It's time. Like, we need a new messaging protocol to replace how email is handled, but it is such a ubiquitous system that everybody uses. It's really hard to change that.
Well, Don, you're in luck because just 2 days after this article, we have another article from Tom's Hardware that Gmail adds new security features during redesign, and I'm sure this will address all of the concerns you just had, right?
Sort of. So I've complained. I use Gmail every single day. I've had a Gmail account since they opened in the very beginning. So I like Gmail, but I've used them every day since they opened at the very beginning, and they really haven't changed much since then. In the last 16 years or however long it's been, probably longer, Gmail by and large looks the same as it did back then, and feature-wise, it's practically the same. They've added a few new things, but overall, it hasn't seen a lot of love from Google. And this week, they've rolled out into production their new UI, right? That makes it looks prettier, right? They did the same thing with Google Calendar, which again is another product they really hadn't updated. So they're making things look prettier and add new functionality, and that's what Tom's Hardware is reporting on. But they also added in some security features. Those security features are designed to again, help to make sure that you understand whether an email is safe or not. The big thing, though, is people have been pushing for features like end-to-end email encryption, where when I write the email, it's encrypted. It's then sent along. Whoever receives it as encrypted. They can use their key to unlock it, and they know it's the email that I sent, that it came from me and not from an attacker. Well, Google rolled out security features, like the ability to set an expiration date, like the ability to basically like expire an email and say it's only good for 2 days and then it's gone, or to unsend an email that's already been sent. They added that, but they stopped short of adding encryption. And that's a really big problem, because that's the one feature that would add true email security and allow us to filter out. I mean, imagine if I just said, hey, if any of you out there receive an email from Don at ITProTV and it's not encrypted with this key, then it's crap. Immediately, I can throw that email away. You just found a 100% effective way to identify spam coming from my address. If it doesn't match this key, then it's garbage. Well, Google can't implement that feature. And the reason is they have to be able to look inside of your email to serve up relevant ads. That's how they make money, are on the ads. And if they do end-to-end encryption, you just kill the revenue stream, the way that they make money, the way they learn about you and your interest and what ads to serve up. So Google will never be able to offer the full level of security that we need unless they start doing paid Gmail. Well, they have paid Gmail, but they still use the ads there too. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, and we still don't get the security features. So while they did roll out some security features, they're really not effective. They're really not the ones that we need to truly authenticate email and solve a lot of these problems.
Well, Google might need to go ahead and charge anyway to everyone, because according to our next article on The Verge, they are just bleeding cash, and they probably only have hundreds of billions in the bank.
Yeah,
now.
It's getting tight.
So yeah, things they're tight in the old belt there in Mountain View, but they're bleeding cash trying to take on Amazon in the smart home space. So just this last Christmas, I feel like we were seeing ads every day for Google Home, Google Home Mini, and Alexa and things like that. So that's really where the fight is now.
So, Alexa has been a big surprise hit for Amazon. They've done a great job getting that device out there. People have taken up to it, and they didn't do it at like a rock bottom discount price. The original Alexa cost $180. You get it discounted down to maybe $100, but they've made money off of that hardware and released a pretty neat platform that you can ask it questions and you can buy things. That's what Alexa does. So Amazon has done really well with it. Well, Google, who has one of the best search algorithms possible and can find answers and things better than anybody, it makes sense they would be in that space, but they were a little late to the game, and they released Google Home, and they acquired Nest to make that part of their solution so they can compete toe-to-toe with Alexa. But they've been losing out big time. And you mentioned all the ads. If you think about all the ads, what were they? If you get a cell phone, we'll give you a free Android or Google Home. If you buy one Google Home, we'll give you a second one free. It was all these ways to give you one for free because people weren't going out and buying them, that they already had an Alexa device, or they were holding out for the Apple one, which, boy, that one was a turd. And Apple is another one who totally missed the boat on this. The sad part here, like with Apple, I don't feel bad because Siri's terrible. Alexa's not that great either as far as asking or answering questions. I ask Alexa questions all the time that it can't answer. The Google Home device, the sad part here, it's really good. If you ask it questions, it's always got great information. Like, it is able to answer questions better than just about anybody, but they're just not winning in that market. And so right now, Google is making it kind of like a loss leader where they recorded 621 million in losses in Google Home, but they're not giving up. They're just continuing to dump the funds. Like you mentioned with Alphabet, the parent company, they make just hundreds of billions of dollars. Like, I mean, they are a massive, massive organization. So when we talk about a $620 million loss, that would be like, I don't know, dropping a $5 bill on the ground.
Oh, you
us.
poor things.
Yeah. So they'll survive. They're not giving up, but it certainly is surprising. And it shows how sometimes you might have a better product, but not be winning. So here you got me. I'm acknowledging, I think Google Home is a better product, but I've got an Alexa on my desk, not a Google Home, and I've got Alexa at home. And
there's a Nest watching us too, back over your shoulder as well.
That's actually a Amazon Cloud Cam.
That is? Oh, that looks exactly like the Nest.
They totally ripped off the Nest. I mean, that's
who ripped off whom? We'll have to get to the bottom
Amazon
of that.
ripped off Nest. Yeah, that's a given.
Well, apparently it worked because they're the ones winning right now.
Yeah, and that's funny. So we'll see that battle continue. The other interesting thing that's not mentioned in the article by The Verge, I don't think they mention it anywhere in here, is how Apple has totally failed to penetrate that market. And I think it's because when they finally rolled out the HomePod, it was over $300 and it just played music. Like, come on, make it do something.
Yeah. Well, Apple's MO seems to be to wait until the market is established sometimes, and then come in and make a better one. So, I don't think we've heard the last of them.
Yeah. I guess that's what surprised me here is they waited, and then they released a product that wasn't better.
Yeah.
Like, they went for sound fidelity, and so if you play music on an Apple HomePod, it does sound better than on the Google or Amazon devices. But functionality-wise, beyond playing music, it's not impressive. So it ends up being a $300 speaker, which you could already get Bose speakers for that. You don't need to get Apple involved.
That's true. Well, sticking with Amazon now, because that was kind of about Amazon in a roundabout way, we've got news right from AWS here on their blog. The Registry of Open Data is now on AWS. So what does that mean for us?
All right. So we've reported a few times over the last few months about AWS S3 buckets with sensitive data that were not secured, right? So government contractors, the military, whoever it is, where they have this big set of data and they store it in S3 and they forget to click that make it private button, and now it's public and somebody finds it and all that data has now been leaked. Well, that's the bad side of having data stored in S3. This is the good side. There's actually a lot of data that's generated by the government, by the military, by private sector that they want to share with the world and say, here's this massive data set, use it how you'd like, right? So that you don't have to reinvent the wheel and you've got access to this great volume of information. The problem was learning that it existed, finding that data. So what Amazon did is they set up the Registry of Open Data on AWS, which they call RODA, which is, I don't know, kind of an antiquated name for technology. Here's our new database technology. It's called Gertrude, and like give it a cooler name. Sorry, Gertrude. But basically, what RODA does is a collection of all of these different data sets that are publicly available. And if you browse through, there's some really neat ones in here. I mean, they list them all, or you can search through it and find it. But basically, there's the ones like Sentinel-2, which has a lot of satellite imagery and data that's been collected. There's one in here that has to do with elevations. So maybe you're writing a game that's a flight simulator, and you want to have a map that spans the globe, but you need proper elevations so you can do mountains and other things. You can tap right into that database that's being published free of charge from Amazon and gather that data and have real-time, up-to-date information for the entire globe or whatever it is you're tapping into. As you kind of poke around in here, they give you exactly how you can interact with it, the API calls you need to make to get into it, and basically take a look at what that data is. It's a massive set of information that's in there. And if we just kind of browse over to its actual homepage, this is the blog post that was announcing it. But if you browse over to it, you can come in and take a look at a lot of what's over there. And some of it is kind of interesting because you have like here, IRS 990 filings. The bulk of every IRS 990 business filing from 2011 to present is available right there. You can poke through it and see what you can find. I'm sure it's very exciting. Terrain tiles, that's the elevations I was talking about. You can pull those from there. The Common Crawl, it's a collection of web data containing over 5 billion web pages. So kind of like Google's database of web pages, you could have your own database of web pages right off the bat that you could do statistical analyses on or create your own search engine and so on. The cool thing here, though, is that this is all just public data. It's stored and it's available. New York City taxi and limousine commission trip record data. It's stuff like that if you're a data analyst is really interesting and entertaining. This one got me was the Amazon bin image data set, over 500,000 images. Images taken by their robotic units as they move packages from one shelf to another. Apparently they've taken images of it and they've put it in here. I'm not exactly sure how you would use that to do anything exactly, but it's got it. So some are certainly more useful than others, but it's cool to see somebody take what's widely been a problem, these data sets that are being not secured like they should be, and saying, here's some that are intentionally not secured so that you can use them, and who knows what ideas people can come up with.
But this is the kind of thing that basically you get by being an AWS customer, so it's kind of just a way for them to try to get you over from Azure or any of the other providers, basically.
Well, in this case, they've published the API connections and it's free. So if I had my entire infrastructure in Azure, I
you
could
still tap
there.
into that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep. So they haven't put a lot of strings on this. It's pretty open.
even more impressive then. And just for the record, my grandmother's name is Gertrude,
Is it really?
which is both proving your point and offensive.
Yeah.
So
Well, your grandmother's lame. So there. That's it. I'm going to make fun of his grandmother the rest of the show.
God rest your soul. All right. Amazon next has a top secret plan to build home robots that will, be the death of us. I remember buying on my wedding registry, buying these silver candlesticks, thinking, well, I'm buying the thing that's going to murder me someday. and this basically is the same thing. These robots, I assume, will be our new overlords. But Don, this excited you.
So this is my favorite article of the week because it's super top secret, right? So they're not really giving us a lot of details. This is from Bloomberg. Bloomberg only has so many pieces of information on here. But basically, they've got a robotics team. They're trying to create robots that are priced so that they can be placed in the home, right? And because it's Amazon, who knows what it can do? It can buy stuff for you, bring you a beer, I don't know. But when I see articles like these, there's two things that pop into my mind, right? The first one is the robot from Rocky 2, right? When his brother-in-law has the robot and he teaches it to, basically get him a beer. That's one that pops in. And the other one is the SNL skit, which You knew
Yeah.
immediately when I
Oh, yeah.
mentioned the Old Glory robot insurance from SNL, and I'm sure we don't have a license to be able to play this thing, but I'm gonna cheat the system anyway. And here we go. Sam Watterson, when he's telling you like when the robots come to eat your prescription medicines, and they will come, you need
Yeah.
Old Glory insurance. Well, let me tell you, Sam was right. It's that time. The robots are coming. Amazon's going to make it happen. And when you get them primed, the robots will come to steal your prescription medicine and kill your family in under 2 days.
And what's really going to be telling then is if Amazon starts providing robot insurance, they're going to get both sides of the payday there. So watch out for that and make sure your prescriptions are locked up because, as Don said, they are coming.
They are.
So we'll look forward to more coming out on that because it's top secret now. So top secret that everyone on the internet is talking about it, but we don't know what we're talking about yet. All right, let's switch gears now. We've got some news about MySQL. MySQL 8.0 was released with many improvements and faster performance. This is on Phoronix, and so this is a big deal, I think, for developers.
Yeah, absolutely. So MySQL it's an open source project. It's a relational database that is wildly popular. It's actually ranked like the #2 database platform in the world. Check it, I've got that in the background here. DB Engines ranks it as #2, with Oracle actually being #1 and Microsoft SQL Server being #3. So, I mean, it's right up there in the top. Now, MySQL started as an open source project that was largely funded by Oracle, and now it is basically wholly owned. Oracle does own MySQL. So, Oracle database is their commercial product. And then MySQL, they have both. They have the open source free one and they have the commercially supported version of it. Now, when Oracle took over, there were a lot of people that were upset about that and said, I don't want a commercial entity controlling this open source project. And so people started jumping ship to a product called MariaDB, which was a fork of the last open source version of MySQL. But if you look at old DB engines here, MariaDB is ranked way down here at number 18. Actually, sorry, it's number 14. It jumped
trending up
quite a bit. Yeah, trending up. So as of April, it is now ranked number 14 and climbing. So what a lot of people are doing is saying, if I've got MySQL deployed, I should start migrating over to MariaDB if I want to adhere to the open source standards, whatever it is, and then you'll migrate over. But for those of you that are sticking with MySQL, Oracle has shown it some love with a pretty big jump. MySQL's last stable version was 5.7. Now we're jumping all the way to 8.0, and they're adding some new features, a lot of security tweaks, better JSON support. But the main thing is performance. The advantage of having the world's largest commercial database provider involved is that they kind of know how to make databases work. And so MySQL 8 is supposed to see improvements that sometimes are up to, this is marketing speak, up to 30 times faster than previous performance. We'll see if we actually get that. But MySQL is still available for free. It's got a community edition. You can go right to the mysql.com webpage, download it, install it. It's in the repositories of most Linux distributions. If you're using a repo, though, watch out because a lot of them will still be 5.7. 8.0 literally just came out on April 19th. So it'll take a little while to trickle out to all the big repos, but it is definitely a big deal if you use MySQL databases.
I will get on that right after I'm finished patching those Drupal servers.
Well, I mean, you could have MySQL back-ending your Drupal install.
Oh, that's true.
It needs a database.
That's very true. I'm bringing it all together for you here, folks. All right, next from the Brisbane Times, your old stomping ground of Australia. Users don't want iOS to merge with macOS, Apple chief says. So once again, Apple is telling us what we want. Like we don't want headphone jacks anymore. We don't want home buttons.
Headphone jacks. They're terrible.
That's what I've been told that I don't want. So I can only assume I agree with them. I only want USB-C on all my devices now.
I don't want phones with a flat screen so you can put a screen protector on them. Instead, if you could put a little stupid curve on the edge of each one to completely make it where screen protector is useless, that would be the greatest feature for me.
I also hate touchscreen laptops with a passion.
Yeah, terrible.
But now, yeah, we don't want to merge because we've talked about this technology now, how it seems to kind of be going that way where iOS and Mac OS would be coming together. And so this sounds like Apple saying, well, even if you think it's going that way, we're not going to go that way because we don't think you want it.
This is one of those times where a CEO comes out and specifically tells us something, and I don't want to believe it, right? So I I made a prediction back in December. We did our New Year's predictions, right? And I said how I think Microsoft is moving away from Windows Server, which I may well be wrong on, but they are actually moving forward. So I think maybe I'm just a year ahead on that prediction. With Apple, they have all but effectively killed off macOS Server, so it's pretty much gone. And the macOS development team has largely been pulled over to the iOS team. So there are very few developers at Apple that are still working on macOS in general. And we've seen stability decreasing in macOS with each version. Peter, how are you loving your High Sierra experience on your laptop?
I haven't made the switch yet.
See? I mean, now, what does that say about Apple where they're so proud about how when a new version of iOS comes out, they'll get 80% adoption rate within 2 months.
Yeah.
But with Mac OS, people actively don't want to upgrade because they know how unstable the next version is. And Mac OS High Sierra has been a train wreck, really, as far as stability. And it's not the first time that's happened. So Apple has given every indicator that Mac OS is on life support, right? From stability issues to pulling developers from it to not updating hardware, right? The Mac Mini hasn't been updated in over 3 years. They've given every sign. And so what are we supposed to think about that? Well, maybe we're going to see iOS become the new platform. iOS has a huge amount of apps. It's very secure. It's very stable. Why not bring that over to the desktop? And you'll have a few power users who are upset, right? But the bulk of users will be perfectly fine with that, and they jump over. So Tim Cook specifically came out and said, look, our users don't want us to merge these platforms, so I don't see that happening, right? Where's this actual quote? Let's try.
Maybe that's the indication that it is going to happen, because there are lots of things that Apple users don't want that they've still given us. So maybe that means it's coming very soon.
That could be it. You never quite know where they're thinking or what they're going to do. And I'm trying to find his exact quote where he said it, but basically he's saying here, like, we don't believe in sort of watering down one for the other. Both the Mac and iPad are incredible. One of the reasons that both of them are incredible is because we push them to do what they do well. And if you begin to merge the two, you begin to make trade-offs and compromises. So, that's what he's saying about it. And, we'll see. They're making it where iOS apps will be able to run on top of macOS soon. That, again, to me is like, well, if you're going to start doing that, why exactly are you keeping around macOS? Well, time will tell. I guess we'll see on this one. But I really just, unless they're willing to start putting more developers back on macOS and start to make it more stable, I just don't see it being sustainable long term.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Well, let's stick with some Mac news here. Next on 9to5mac.com, a report that Apple's complaints about AT&T and Verizon may have led to the Department of Justice eSIM investigation. So, snitches.
All right, so snitches get stitches. So this was kind of a funny one because this actually started back with the iPhone 7. When the iPhone 7 came out, Apple used what was called an eSIM. And I remember when I got my iPhone 7, it had an eSIM in it. And the neat part here, and this is kind of a U.S. problem. So in the United States, we have basically two main cellular networks here, Verizon and AT&T. And there's a couple others out there. But AT&T is a GSM-based network, like what's used in Europe. And Verizon is still CDMA-based. And I think they're the only one really here in the U.S. anymore. So we have these two main networks. Well, in the past, they always used different connectivity, either different radios in the phones or different SIM cards or both, so that when you bought an iPhone, you had to get the Verizon version or you had to get the AT&T version. Well, with eSIM technology, they can build the antennas for both technologies into the phone, and you can have a SIM card that's designed to work in either network. So it's just this one eSIM that's built in. It's not an actual card. It's just built into the phone. Well, the phone providers, for whatever reason, said, yeah, we don't want to do that. And this actually started as a universal SIM where there actually was a SIM card. And I remember taking my iPhone 7 in to get it activated because I bought it off contract. And so I took it in and they took out the SIM card, dropped it in the trash, and put in a different SIM card. So here's this universal SIM that will work on their network, and they still just threw it away and put in their own, right? Because they don't want to make it easy for you to switch cell phone networks. They want you to have to talk to them and get it transferred over and stuff. eSIM made it too easy to switch cell phone providers. So there was a lawsuit. Right, the Apple has been complaining about AT&T and Verizon, saying, "Look, these guys aren't honoring the eSIM. We're putting eSIMs in there, and they're not using them. They're choosing to use their own SIM cards instead." even when the eSIM is already in place, ready to activate, ready for their network. So the Department of Justice is finally doing an investigation on this. They're stepping in to say, look, would you guys quit being buttheads and just use it? I mean, it's really just a silly thing. So it's all about AT&T and Verizon trying to do lock-in on this stuff, and we'll see where it goes. But Apple really has been a big part of that push to get this universal SIM, because that's a challenge people have when they buy a phone. They don't want to know, like, is it only going to work on this network or that network? Do I have to have the right SIM card in there? They just want a phone that doesn't have a crazy little hatch on the top of it that has to have a pinhole to get at the SIM card, which is one more place for water to get in the phone. Johnny Ive wants to get rid of every hole found on your phone, even the ones you talk into. So that's his dream, apparently, his design goal. And the SIM card is just one more spot where you have that problem. So we'll see where that lawsuit goes. I don't think it'll ever get to the courts. I think AT&T, Verizon will finally just say, all right, fine, we'll start honoring them, and the suit goes away.
Yeah, we'll stop antitrusting.
Yeah.
And, and play by the rules. Well, next up, sticking with Mac news on cultofmac.com, your 13-inch MacBook Pro might need its battery replaced. And from what I read, it sounds like they're actually expanding, which could be a problem because there's limited amount of space in these devices.
So this article got me because it says 13-inch MacBook Pro. All right, I use a 13-inch MacBook Pro, so I'm like, great, I'm wrapped up into this thing. But on Cult of Mac, they show a picture. And the picture is actually the older MacBook Pro, the 2014 and 2016 model. And so I was like, oh, all right, it's the old model, and that's not going to affect me. But it's just an example of using a bad stock image because it's the non-touch bar edition that was released in the last year and a half. So this one, see how it's got the illuminated Apple on it? That's the old one. The new ones just have the metallic Apple image, which is what I have. And it's the non-touch bar one, which I, of course, have the non-touch bar. You actually have touch bar on yours.
I've dodged the bullet, yes.
Yeah, spoiled. So I have no touch bar. So that means I fall within it. If you're like me and you have a 13-inch MacBook Pro with USB-C ports and it is a non-touch bar model, they made an oopsie with the battery. And there are a couple of batteries that are expanding. When you expand a battery inside a unibody case, it has nowhere to expand to, except inside of itself. The chemicals inside touch, and then they tend to explode or catch on fire. So that's a bad thing, and Apple is doing a replacement on that, so they'll replace those batteries and get that taken care of. If you're not sure if your device is affected or not, Apple does have a page. Cult of Mac actually linked to it. Apple has a web page for it, which is www.apple.com/support/13-inch-MacBook Pro-battery-replacement. Rolls right off the tongue.
Yeah.
You'd think their marketing team would have done something a little better
A
there.
little Bitly, maybe? Yeah.
But anyhow, on that page, you can jump in and paste in your serial number. Once you post in your serial number, it'll tell you if you're affected. For me, I was able to throw mine in here. And I did it the first day this was announced, but they've actually added a few new serial numbers. So let's run mine just to see if I've been added here. If you don't know your serial number, it's written on the bottom of your Mac, which is pretty convenient. Unless you're like me and you're stuck a skin on there, or you're trying to type it. So if you go to your Apple menu and About This Mac, your serial number is displayed right there on that screen. You can copy and paste it in, and let's see if I have to do a recall. And nope, I'm not eligible, so that means I'm not part of the recall. So that's good for me. I don't have to go down. But if you are in the recall, then you need to take it down to your nearest Apple shop, and they'll replace that battery free of charge.
Yeah, what worries me about things like this is when the first one is taken on a plane and catches fire, and then they say, "Oh, you can't have MacBooks on planes anymore," and it's it like the whole Galaxy,
the Note 7s.
yeah, where they would clump them all together, and you wouldn't be able to say, "No, but look, see, my security or my serial number is just fine."
Mine's a Note 6. I haven't upgraded.
I'm good.
Too bad.
Yeah, too bad. All right, let's switch gears now. We got some Microsoft news to talk about. So this is on thenewstack.io. You know it's a good site. It's got .io. Yeah, it's the future. Microsoft Azure container instances are now ready for production workloads. So this is something we've talked about a little bit in the past about how containers are coming to the cloud and being built in like that. So they're ready to go over at Azure.
Yeah, so Microsoft a few months ago rolled out a preview of their Azure containers, which is kind of their equivalent of Docker, right? So it's a container system that you can use to develop an application on your own machine, and then you can upload right into Azure, and they call it serverless computing, right? Because you never really know about the server or the instance that's under the hood. You just deal with your container. it's a good system. They have a Windows container image and they have a Linux container image. It is not directly compatible with Docker. These are a different type of container, but you can build them and deploy right into Azure. It's optimized. It's good performance and very stable. So if you're somebody who has dived head over heels into the Azure environment and that's the ecosystem that you're working in, these Azure containers actually work really well and they're directly supported by Microsoft. They do support Docker images as well, though. And so I would always kind of encourage people. It's nice to pick a system that you can move if you need to. If I have Docker images, it's easy enough for me to move from Azure to Google Compute Engine to Amazon Web Services. I can move. If I get locked into Azure container instances, I can't move anywhere else. So you want to make sure that you always keep that in mind as you select the technologies that you use.
But this also works with Kubernetes, right? I think
It can be managed by Kubernetes,
Okay.
yes. Yep. But now that's a difference. Like Kubernetes is the management system that we use for deploying the software. It's different than the actual container format itself.
Gotcha.
Now, you might be able to write a manifest that builds your software for both container systems, and then you're really covered. And then you've got the choice of, well, why would I do Docker versus Azure if I can do both, right? And the reality there is if you're deploying into the Azure ecosystem, then you'll get better support by using their container images. I think as time goes on, we'll start to see new features roll in there, and there'll be a more compelling reason to go with it. But the key takeaway of this article is that it's not a preview anymore. It's actually production ready. So if you've been testing and experimenting, it's ready for production workloads now.
Gotcha. And we've got one more Microsoft story to get to here. This is on hothardware.com. Microsoft confirms Windows 10 April update with lots of new features. And I know Don has spent some time looking at these features. So what stands out to you?
All right, so the main thing is that the update is going to happen, right? So the update was actually supposed to roll out on April 10th, but there was a show-stopping bug that Microsoft had to basically call that off. So the April update is coming. It's like Game of Thrones, right? Winter is coming.
Yeah.
The April update is coming. There was a lot of debate over what the name was going to be for it, because we had the Fall Creators Update and all of that. There were rumors this was going to be called the Spring something or other update, but it is just being called the April Update. It's rolling out. Honestly, in my opinion, most of the new features are not all that impressive. You have this timeline feature now where you'll be able to resume the things you were working on, very similar to the way that Mac OS works, where when you fire a system up, it relaunches the programs you're in right back to the point that you were at. Windows will be able to do that. The biggest feature, in my opinion, is that they've reduced, and I don't know if this article even talks about it, but they've reduced the amount of time to apply the update. That when the original Creators Update came out, it could take a lot of systems on average between 90 minutes and 2 hours to fully apply the update. And the annoying part was it would download the update in the middle of the night. It would apply a lot of it. And then when you went to log in the first time, it would say, Windows is getting ready, and you still had like another 30 minutes to go before it was done. It was super mega annoying. And they made it a little bit better in the fall update when it came out, where it got that down a little bit more. But here it is. They actually do talk about it in the article. It says that they've optimized it, and as a result, Windows insiders on average have been able to upgrade within 30 minutes of offline time versus 51 minutes for fall creators and 82 minutes for the original creators update. So Microsoft is finally getting the update window to be a little more compact, which I think is super important. These updates are starting to replace the old upgrades. Like if I upgraded from Windows XP to Windows 7, I expected that to take a long time. But if it was just Patch Tuesday, I expected that to be 10, 15 minutes. Well, these big updates that come out now, like the Fall Creators updates, those are designed to be kind of like going from Windows XP to Windows 7. Like they're considered big updates, but consumers don't realize that. And it's just super freaking annoying. So Microsoft is finally rearranging that to make it a little more user-friendly. I'm surprised it took so long, but that to me is the biggest feature, which really is not a feature you want to brag about. Like, hey, we're making the update process suck less.
Yeah.
There's that. But otherwise, if you're a sysadmin out there, there's not really any security features or other things rolling out as part of this that are going to impact your life in any significant way.
I mean, does that mean, though, that maybe they shouldn't look at putting it, deploying it out on their network, or?
Yeah, this wouldn't be one you hurry on. Eventually, there are some where, like with, remember with Windows 8, where you had Windows 8.0 and then 8.1 came out, and eventually Microsoft said, we're dropping support for Windows 8. And now we're only supporting 8.1 and higher. Well, they've done the same with Windows 10, where they said we're dropping support for Windows 10 RTM and Windows 10 Creator Update. You've got to have the fall Creator Update now if you want support, right? Well, the April update, it'll probably be another 6 months before they say that, and you've got to have it. So you will need to roll it out, but it's certainly not one that I'd be scrambling to roll out as fast as I could. There's not really any amazing feature in there that's going to make you die to have it. It's nice stuff to have, but it's not something that you're just going to be jumping to get at. We'll see. You know, the next update might carry something a little bit more to it, but for the most part, any security fix you're going to get out of band on this one that doesn't have to be part of some big roll up. You'll get those, but otherwise, mainly it's just reduced offline time.
Makes sense. All right. Well, let's move on to our final story of the day now. And this is one that I know we talked about Amazon stuff already, but we wanted to save this kind of for our WTF section here at the end. So this one's on businessinsider.com. Undercover author finds Amazon warehouse workers in the UK peed in bottles over fears of being punished for taking a break. So that 2-day shipping, or, you know, in some big cities now, the same day or within an hour shipping or whatever it is they do, I don't know, drones and things coming and bringing your fresh groceries. That apparently comes at a price, and that price is poor working conditions, as it would seem, for the employees.
Yeah, you know, a lot of these articles have been coming out. Amazon's been taking a bit of a hit over the last year about their workplace conditions in the warehouse. Most of the articles don't have a whole lot of good background. They might cite one instance and make it seem like it's an epidemic, so we don't really know. But I'm just curious, now that Amazon is working on their robot force, you know, for homes, obviously a robot force in the warehouse would be good. So have they developed a robot that can pee in a bottle? Because if they have, then that's a game changer.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's probably just one bottle of pee. And what office doesn't have a bottle of pee in it that you could extrapolate that around? I mean, we keep one here on the desk next to me at all times. But, you know, this is something that truck drivers have been doing for years. So it's not really new there. But, you know, to me, I was thinking about the people over at Foxconn making the iPhones going, wait, you guys get bottles? Like, that sounds pretty nice.
That's an upgrade.
We don't even get bottles over here. So, something to keep an eye on, and I'm sure that you know, if there continues to be news coming out about this, we'll hear about some improved working conditions.
Amazon has come out and said this is not true. This is, you know, we are providing proper workplace conditions. We are providing breaks and so on. So it's a bit of a he said, she said. We'll see where that goes. Maybe this is actually just some thinly veiled workplace drug testing. Like, if we can just get them to pee in a bottle, this will all work out. Who knows?
Talk about random. You've already provided the sample. You just didn't know that you were providing a sample. Well, speaking of which, we've been in here for a good hour or so, and I've had this whole
you're ready for your
bottle
drug
of water,
test.
so I've got to go take a drug test that I didn't know was happening until just now as well. But thank you, everybody, for watching. Please take a moment and share us with your friends. Rate the podcast. I've seen we've got a lot of good new ratings on iTunes in particular, and some of the other services, so we really appreciate that. But definitely let your friends know about it as well. So, Don, any closing thoughts today?
Don't buy any yellow liquids from Amazon.
Yeah, I'm just going to stick away from all liquids. I'll buy my yellow liquids locally. So thanks, everybody, for joining us in the Technado, and we'll see you next week.